Welcome everyone. Grab a seat if you're rolling in. We do have some snacks and drinks in the back if you need anything even while we're going. Very excited to introduce our guests here, but before I do, a few quick announcements. So we are, my name is Jamin, we've met. I'm the learning chair for this year. My term is ending shortly, but it's been an honor to be your learning chair for the last 2 years. It's an awesome event that I've really enjoyed, and I've got an event here that we've worked with Glenda and Jenny with that I know you're going to love. It's going to be very insightful, and you'll get a lot out of it for sure. We are a membership group that does depend on our partners, our strategic alliance partners. We do have a few in the room here today, so I will thank them. Actually, I'm not sure if Gabby Mascorp is here yet.
She's in the restroom. She'll be all right.
So we'll give her a round of applause if she comes. And then Jeff Wedren is an EOS implementer, as well as Gabby. And then we have Josh Levine. Josh is with Entrepreneur Inc. So thanks for what you all do. We're also sponsored by Ike Bailey, Teams by Beam, Work Optional, Corporate For Insurance, Hush, Blackwell Law, and Insperity. So round of applause and for thanks for our partners. We also have, I don't know if we have new members today. We have a prospective member. Do we have any new members? Okay, we have a prospective member. Paul, is it Ferguson? Did I say that right? All right, so welcome to this event, Paul. Thanks for coming. And we do have a few quick announcements as well. Are you Gabby? So, hello Gabby, I just announced you, so thank you for your part as well. All right, so a few quick announcements and then I'll be done. So we have some EOS grads, Paul Jonas, Megan Beckler, Chris Morbitzer, Brian Adamek, and John Stojan that are graduating from applause. We're going to celebrate Thursday, so they're going to be celebrating their graduation. So very exciting for them and for us. We also have July 16th. We have the lawn bowling event at Brookview. I think some of you have been there another time. It's a great event. Good time to get together. Very low-key social event, so I know you'll enjoy that. That's for EO and EOA members, execs, and strategic alliance partners. And there's a couple tea times available as well, if anyone wants to do that. Otherwise, we have the lawn bowling there, and it's always a good time. So please come if you can. And we also have family events at the St. Paul Saints game. So that is coming up in September. So not just yet, but mark your calendars. So I would also like to thank, as always, our chapter administrator, Glenda, for all she does for these events. Thank you so much. And Jenny, as well, is she outside? She is doing, thank you, Jenny, for what you're doing. She's doing more and more for these events, so thank you, Jenny, for pulling it all together. All right, without further ado, I get to announce Mike now, Mike Feuz. Like a car or a bomb, we can take our pick, he says. So Mike is a key member of the expert team at ITR Economics. It's a really cool group that has some amazing modeling, predictive information. It provides real-life insights for businesses and our personal lives as well. So I got to hear them speak. I was trying to remember when it was, at a YPO event, something like 10 years ago. And a lot of the things that they predicted, I could kind of watch play out after that. And some of the things they predicted were for the 2029 range, which I think is coming up right now. We chatted, and it sounds like a lot of those predictions are still what they're thinking about. But so many things have happened since that time, COVID, and with the stimulus, and the reserve currency, and Bitcoin, all these things that are changing, so I'm super excited to hear some of these updates. The reason we brought Mike in this year was that he, with a lot of the Trump changes this year, where he is definitely moving forward with what he wants and not necessarily what the world order is used to. and thinking about the changing world order and what they can speak of. I thought they would have some great insights. So I'm looking forward to that with you. He's got a master's degree from George Mason University, and he worked with lots of C-suite leaders in manufacturing, construction, oil and gas, and finance. So he's got a lot of experience, real-world experience with businesses and helping run businesses. So he understands what we are going through. So he's going to be giving us a forward-looking view of the financial landscape and what we can expect. I don't know if we can guarantee it will be optimistic, but we can guarantee it will be insightful. Is that fair? All right, so welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to be here, everybody. I don't like hand mics. I like to tell myself, because I used to be a competitive weightlifter before children, and I think my arms are still so strong it's heavy. I don't know if that's it. I just had baby number 6. I already did the having, but my wife did the having. But this is like one of my first road trips out after maternity leave, so it's a little exciting. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Minnesota, for having me. So, has anyone here ever heard an ITR presentation before? Did you guys hear Brian or Alan, by chance? Our founders, the older guys? Okay. So they have a high bar. I might disappoint you two, but the rest of you, this should be great. This will hopefully be the best economics presentation I've ever heard, because we're going to make it very engaging. It's not going to be dry. You're not going to listen to some weird lecture about downward sloping demand curves. I'm happy to talk about that over bourbon at any time, but I realize I'm the outlier and not too many people want to hear about that. Big goal for today, it will be more of an optimistic outlook. I'm an optimist by nature. Our outlook, if anyone's going to go to sleep, you saw an econ talk, you for some reason had to come to it, you've penciled in nap time. If you remember one thing from this talk, the next 5 years we generally see economic growth in the US economy and the global economy. This year, 25, is going to be key in positioning your businesses to be successful in those 5 years or to maximize the opportunity. Because we're nearing, and we'll cover it, probably the low point in inflation. So your top lines are going to do great for the next 5 years. The main obstacle businesses are going to be faced is the bottom line, is margin preservation and protection. You have no fear with your top line. And we're going to dive into what's going on and how you can think about it and tackle those obstacles, and we will talk about the next decade as well. I won't get ahead. It is not as optimistic, but if you're ready for it, you can thrive. ITR, briefly, we're the oldest still operating economic consulting firm in the US. We've been around since 1948. We have a historical 94.7% forecast accuracy. If you heard me talk last year, this is just our report card on how we did in the past year. You heard me talk last January, and I came back to January 12 months later. Here's how our just 12-month forecast panned out accuracy-wise. We do believe in transparency. It's easy to be transparent when you can put up 99, 98, 97. But last year, housing, we were at 88%. So we didn't put it, that's below our standards. We missed the unprecedented rise of interest rates compared to the federal funds rate. It was unprecedented, but accuracy is important. It allows those who use ITR to plan with confidence over the next 3 to 5 years so that they know when there's going to be periods of opportunity that they need to lean into and when there's going to be headwinds so they can mitigate those headwinds. I'm going to give everyone, before we jump into the story. Well, I guess first of all, we have a good sized group here, but we can make this as conversational as you want. So, open invite to interrupt at any point in time with questions. You can save them for the end if you want to, but if you want to interject, you can disagree with me, you can try to make me sweat, you can ask me to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole. If we go too far, I'll just try to pull us out. But an open invite there. I think the more conversational it is, the more enjoyable. But I want to give everyone to start just 2 tools to kind of set the stage. One tool that you can use in your business the moment you walk out of here today, and a second tool that you can use as we go through the presentation today. So this will also be just the high-level, 40,000-foot view of how ITR does what we do. We use what's called business cycle theory, but this is this first tool that you can use in your own business. It's called a rates of change analysis. Maybe some of you do it. Imagine this raw data on the side. It can be any data in your business. It can be your sales, your revenue, your shipments, your bookings, your orders. Typically, 5 to 7 years of data is what I like to start with when we're forecasting a client's business, or, I don't know, overall industrial production in the US. Data by itself is not very useful. Our first step is always to calculate just a rolling 3, right? I'm going to call it today, you'll hear me say 3 MMT, 3-month moving total. It's simple math, right? Just adding up the most recent 3 months, getting the total, and then we want to compare it back to the same 3 months a year prior, just to eliminate any seasonality. ITR's in New Hampshire, we're in Minnesota. If you're a landscaping company in any of those 2 regions, you're doing the lion's share of your business 6 months out of the year, and then you're plowing snow. And by comparing the 2 or dividing the curve by the past, you can calculate a quarterly growth rate, or what you'll hear me say today at times, a 312 rate of change. If you do this with your business, your 312 is your first leading indicator on where your business is headed in the near term. It'll lead by just 3 to 6 months, so it's not a hugely time, but it is exceptionally powerful in telling you when your business is nearing a peak or nearing the trough, things are about to accelerate, or things are about to slow. So this is just saying, hey, this is your business, the last 3 months are up 3.8% in that same 3-month period a year prior. Next step, calculate your rolling 12, your trailing 12, you're probably doing this already. We call it the 12-month moving total, right? It's simple math, we're not doing derivatives in grad school, we're just doing simple addition. Compare it back to the same 12 months, and that calculates that annual growth rate, or that year-over-year growth rate. If this was your business, you're up 2.5%. So while your 312 tells you where you're going, your 1212 tells you where you are. And this is the second tool you can use as we go through today. If you see a 312 and a 1212, which you'll see a lot today, just take a look at where that 312 is in relation to the 1212. If the 312 is above, as it is here, that guarantees you're going to continue to growth rate is going to accelerate and rise. If you see it below, that shows there's downside pressure. And that's why it's so important to watch that 312 when you see a peak, when you see it soften and go below the 1212, or you see it start rising. It's telling you momentum shifting one way or the next. So you heard me say business cycles. The last part of this intro is just quickly defining those. So we watched where the 1212 is, as I said, and then whether it's a series in the economy or one of your businesses. Depending on where that 1212 is what phase of the business cycle we see you in. Phase A, if your 1212 is negative, negative 2%, below year-ago levels, but it's rising, it's going from negative 4 to negative 2, it's getting closer to 0. We call that phase A recovery. It's the blue, it's cyclically rising. Phase B next, accelerated growth, you're up 4%, and you're going 6%. Your growth rate, that 1212, is continuing to rise. 8, 10, 12, 20. Next, phase C, still growth, but slowing. Those growth rates are just easing. 12 to 10 to 9 to 8. That peak, this is very important. That transition, when your business is in a phase B and it's moving into a phase C, that's the most dangerous part of a business cycle for a business. This is why the rates of change and watching your 312 and having other leading indicators, which we'll talk about today, is so valuable, because that's where the mistakes that are most painful are made. That's where you're feeling really good at the top, 20% year-over-year growth, you think the good times are never going to end, and you overextend yourself, you should be keeping more cash on hand, you don't see the shifts coming. We get a lot of clients post-peak. And it's usually a story of like, we missed the peak, we made mistakes, we have too much inventory, don't want to have that happen again. That's why we're coming to ITR. Then phase D, recession, right? Negative growth rate, that 1212 is negative, and it's getting worse. Maybe 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It's the boogeyman in the room. I think the important thing to remember here, if you're an established business, it's a natural part of the business cycle. If you're a startup, you might not see it, you're just taking market share. If you're an established, mature business, you will enter this. Knowing it's coming is how you change your strategy, mitigate the pressures, maybe orchestrate a soft landing, see back in the V, but that might not always be possible. So lastly, you see different sectors of the economy up here. I just put those up here because I'll leave you this one last piece. The economy can seem complex, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes that you're just getting tossed around on the waves, and just whatever happens, I gotta live with it. I think a great way to think about the economy and make it make sense better than it ever has is to think about the economy like it's a train. The front of a train has to move before the back of the train. Understanding where you are in the train will help you understand what's coming and when. The front of the economic train is always going to be financial indicators. Your interest rates, consumer savings rates, that's going to move first. And then it ripples through the rest of the train. I did move housing. I know I'm going to confuse people. Usually housing's the second card. It just happens to be in a little red right now. I don't know where it actually is. Housing's usually number 2. The middle of the train is like manufacturing, most service sectors, retail sales usually captures the service sector very well. It's about a 12-month lag. Interest rates rise. It takes about 12 months before the middle of the train starts feeling that impact. The back of the train, commercial construction, large ship production, aerospace, airplane production. It takes 2 years for what happens to interest rates to start impacting those sectors. Right now, commercial construction across the U.S. is slowing and about to enter a recession, a very mild one we see it, but they're just feeling the impacts of interest rates in 2023. Any questions on that before we dive in?
Can you just say those again, just briefly, each front, middle?
Yeah, so front of the train is always your interest rates, consumer savings rates. Each savings has to preclude spending. If you lower interest rates low enough, you can skip the savings step, but that's how you create a boom, and what comes after a boom? A bust. Yeah, so got to be careful there if you're in policy. Middle of the train is going to be your service sector typically, anything, usually retail sales is a gauge of that, manufacturing. Single family construction, residential construction typically lags only a quarter behind interest rates. It usually goes financial, housing, I just call it production, but it can be service sector too, is the middle, and then non-residential is about 24 months back. So it's about a 2-year loop from front of the train to the back of the train. So, quick snapshot. So this is non-defense capital goods new orders. This kind of gives us a good gauge of where we are in the economy. In plain English, this means B2B spending. This is business activity. I don't know who comes up with the titles, but what I want to draw your attention to first, the green line at the top, that negative 0.2, that's the 12-12 here. Right? That's that annual growth rate. So it's saying, hey, we're still down negative 0.2. The gray line, there's your 312 that you can keep an eye out for. We see that 312 at 0.6. That tells us right now definitively that green line is going to continue to cyclically rise. We're going to see that negative growth rate hit 0 very soon and transition over into some positive growth, at least in the near term. Below, green line, 12-month moving total, that's $892 billion of B2B spending in the U.S. the past 12 months. But you can see we've been in a period of decline. We actually had a little bit of a recession through last year, or we felt that way. But it's starting to rise again, starting to accelerate. So the top is your growth rates. The below is the actual size of this sector, this economic indicator, which is all B2B spending in the U.S. And then we love leading indicators. When I forecast a business or a series such as non-defense capital goods new orders, we're looking at 40 to 50 different indicators. So here's the growth rates for B2B, for that non-defense in the blue, with our forecast in the dots. This is what we're forecasting over the next 12 quarters. All above the 0 line, so positive growth in B2B activity. And then the leading indicators, the Purchasing Managers Index here, leads by 12 months. So I've shifted that light teal line to the right by 12 months. I've moved it so it matches up with the peaks and the troughs. You can see the correlation, and now it's telling us, it's giving us a 12-month peak around the corner. Better than our 312 been. And it's saying, hey, general positivity, but it's having some fits, so the growth rate, it's saying, probably going to be a little muted. We're not going to have that same clear sugar rush rise we did after COVID. We're even seeing a little softer than the 15-16 period of rise, but still growth. And then you can see, we see the peak of the growth coming towards the middle, second half of next year. Just starting to accelerate up. We see it continuing. And we see the peak coming about September of next year. This is all still growth. We just see 27 a little softer, and our long-term view is 28 will accelerate again. So with that, I typically start with the front of the train, interest rates, but I made a decision that we'll start with what's been dominating the headlines. So really tariffs, trade, the global economy, kind of tackle some of that since that's just been it's all we've been thinking about. It's probably my favorite topic in economics, but now that everyone's talking about it, I'm sick of it. It's not cool anymore. I was alone, it's mine, everyone's using it, it's not cool. I'm looking for something new, we'll see how I do. So this dark blue line, world industrial production, it's accelerating, it's in the phase B. Leading indicator, the red line, G7 leads by 8 months, so we've shifted it. It's saying kind of similar, hey, expect a rise in the next 8 months, but probably not gangbuster rise. So we're getting growth, it's just steady, slow growth. It's not popping off. Clearly, we're human beings, we have very short-term memories. We compare the current to what we just went through. I think the last growth period, we remember this craziness, high inventories, couldn't get things on time, lots of free, loose money floating around the economy. A little different this time, but growth. Now, this is our biggest obstacle. Tariffs in and of themselves are microeconomic, meaning they're not going to throw the economy into a recession. They're going to help some, they're going to hurt others. It's important to understand if you're impacted by tariffs, where do you fit? But this is the risk. Economic policy uncertainty. It's on a 3-month moving average. If I did just the monthly, it's actually starting to come down now. That's a positive sign. The 3-month moving average hasn't ticked down, but the monthly has. That's what we want to see. Uncertainty makes businesses sit on their hands. Our view is, we're glad we're getting the uncertainty starting to show the early signs of ticking down. That's what we want. If you don't see that, that's not going to drive us into a recession. There's larger economic forces already at play, but it will kneecap the growth.
How does this measure uncertainty?
It's, I can look up that definition. I know a lot of it is surveys, and then there's another data point where we're looking at new orders and other stuff. There's a lot of surveys that get put out. I can give you the exact definition afterwards. And there's another one that's trade policy uncertainty that's even higher. I like this one because it captures COVID, captures 2008, the Lehman Brothers. When we see this rise, it does correlate very well to economic activity. That's the home. If you don't know what's going on in the next 3 years, you can't plan your business. You want to have some type of understanding of what the environment's going to be like. Our general outlook is still, this will not cause a recession, but it will limit the growth potential if this doesn't subside soon. And we're getting the early signs of it coming down. You just don't see it in the chart, but there's your good news. Now, here's just a snapshot of value of imports. This is just in the last 12 months, a little over $1 trillion. It's going to continue to rise as we raise tariffs. I think the big thing to remember, or at least take away, especially if you're in the manufacturing side or the good side of the economy, right now we're tariffing greater than 56% of intermediate goods. That means we're not tariffing, for example, a finished washing machine from Germany. We're tariffing 6 components that go into the U.S. manufacture. That's going to put a lot of pressure and margin squeeze on producers. So if you're in that space, if you're feeling that impact, you've got to find ways to preserve and protect margin, whether that's raising prices, but that's not always easy to do. You'll often hear in the news, oh, the consumer will pay for it. That's generally true, but they'll never pay for all of it. It really depends on what we would call the nature of the good. If we manufacture together a $20 widget and someone slapped on a $5 tariff, it's not going up to $25. It's probably going to go to 23 or 24, and what depends on how much it goes up is, can the customers switch goods? Is there a substitute that isn't impacted by tariffs? If there's a substitute, the producer has to eat more of it. If there isn't a substitute, the producer has the luxury of passing on the cost. A great example is BMW. They produce 6 vehicles in Mexico. They announced their price increases. very early on when it looked like we had a 25% tariff going in there, and they announced a 4% increase. Why? You don't have to buy a BMW. A tariff is a tax, and if you have choices in the economy, you can switch. Another great policy failure story, during George W. Bush's presidency, Congress, I can't remember who was in control of Congress at that point, but I do know the story was they wanted to tax the rich people, the ultra net rich. Like, how do we do this? And their brilliant plan was, rich people buy yachts, poor people don't buy yachts, middle class people don't buy yachts, let's tax the hell out of yachts. So their brilliant plan, they put a large tax on yachts. Unfortunately, they forgot gazillionaires don't have to buy a yacht. And so yacht production plummeted in the United States. And who builds yachts? Not the gazillionaires. The middle class folks build yachts. Pretty soon there was massive layoffs. They quickly saw, and they reversed that tax, luckily enough to, they caused some damage, but they did it quick enough that the period of pain wasn't as long as it could have been. But it's a great lesson of your good intentions, how good they are, is if people are going to plan around it. Gazillionaire can buy a new car, a second home, doesn't need your yacht. It's the same thing with tariffs. People will plan around it to some extent. It's just the great nature of the world. This is, when we first started getting tariffs, we looked back at like what happened with Trump 1.0 and what lessons could we learn. And really across commodities we found this trend. This is aluminum and steel pricing. And what we typically found was, this is when 2018, 2019, initial steel and aluminum tariffs, we saw it in lumber and other commodities as well. There's about a 4-month surge in pricing, and then things started to cool. And the lesson there is, because there's bigger factors already in play. As I mentioned, it's a tax. So you get that initial price bump. You also get pricing pressures as people recalibrate their supply chains. Where I'm going to source from, I'm going to move stuff from here to there. That causes a little surge. And then things started to cool, because once supply chains started to ease, we figured them out, they were recalibrated. And then at the time, as we were ending 18 and moving into 19, we were going over the peak of that cycle. We were going from a B into C. We were getting softening demand, and those economic forces were stronger than the tariffs. So we started getting a cooling in pricing because demand was softening at that time. And then COVID happened and everything was off the table. This time around, we'll likely have the same effect, except we're in a very different part of the business cycle. We just saw that chart, that B2B spending. We're not peaking, we're at the bottom starting to accelerate. So demand's increasing. So we likely will not get an easing in prices this time around. We might get a surge and then a flattening once we reestablish supply chains and where we're going to source from amidst them. And then this time around, we're also getting more retaliatory tariffs from other countries. So all those will probably add to more upside pressure on prices. The important lesson is there are larger forces at play that have a bigger impact than just tariffs. But we're treating them in the headlines like they're the main driver. They're great for clickbait right now. So I think this is really interesting. I don't think this will help any of your businesses. This is me nerding out. You're going to have to tolerate me. Because often, this is manufacturing production in the blue line from 78 to today. And then manufacturing employment. So we'll hear a lot about how manufacturing has left the U.S. Employment is down from 19.4 trillion at the peak there to 12.8 trillion. But we produce more than double what we did at the peak point. Right here, about the peak of employment, we produce double here in the U.S. We're still a top 3 producer. Automation has been a bigger job killer than offshoring. Not saying offshoring didn't impact some towns, that we didn't move plants over to China, but this shows, especially at this point, this was the huge China surge. We had a big drop of employment, but our productivity was rising in the way of 2008. That alone shows we're producing more while employment is plummeting at its most severe point. And what's also interesting, at this time, total employment in the U.S. is rising. So we're getting new jobs, we were different jobs, the US economy was evolving and changing. 49% of our GDP today is service sector, 20% is the industrial sector. We're still a top 3 producer, and we produce different things now. We're a high-tech producer. The low-tech, t-shirts, textiles, those are done where labor costs are lower. So even if we look at what's onshoring in the US, the 2 #1 onshoring industries are electronics, high-tech, and chemicals. Not onshoring t-shirt manufacturing at this point. Does anyone remember, I have 6 kids as I mentioned, I read a lot of kids' books. Does anyone remember this book? Mike Mulligan and the Steam Shovel. It's a great economic lesson for kids. It's about creative destruction. Because whenever new technologies enter, they destroy jobs and people are hurt. And the steam shovel was getting put out of work because new steam shovels with better technology that weren't using steam are coming on. And the whole book is about his journey of sadness to try to find some work. He finally finds a job, does his last job, and at the end of the job, he figures out, oh, I can do something different. And he finds the next job. But I think it's a great lesson because it does say there's real people when new technologies show up. They are hurt. At one point, Henry Ford made a lot of carriage, buggy repair guys unemployed. Those were real people with families that were hurting. But eventually, you can't forget about the in-between painful part. The world does become a better place for everyone there. We're all happy we're driving an automobile and we're not in buggies. But, great story. Right now, tariffs in and of themselves aren't driving jobs back to the US. It's too early. I'm not saying they won't. But we're already getting a surge in onshoring. So this is onshoring since 2010 has been rising. The blue line is actual jobs. The orange line is jobs that foreign investment has created in the US. This is from one of our friends at ITR called the Reshoring Initiative. They do great research. In 23 alone, we reshored 150,000 jobs. And 137,000 jobs were created because of foreign direct investment. This also is increasing our need for robots because, oops, forgot to put it in here. We have 450,000 open manufacturing jobs right now in the US. It's down from 900,000 at the peak. So when you raise interest rates and lower demand, it does take. We still have 450,000 open manufacturing jobs. We have jobs absolutely coming back to the US because people trust the US. They don't trust China anymore. China's lost their cost advantage. They have a lot of great infrastructure and a highly skilled workforce, but they don't have a cost advantage, which the jobs they did take over from offshoring was primarily that reason. And they eroded a lot of trust with the globe. So, and the tech jobs, the jobs that are coming back are higher skilled jobs. This isn't a low skilled labor that's being created. And the other unfortunate part, I think I can say unfortunate, the jobs that are coming back aren't going back to Youngstown, Ohio, or to Detroit. They're favoring the South. 56% of these jobs have gone to the South. Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, low taxes. 22% is in the Midwest, they're number 2, so that does capture some of those folks, but there's still this mismatch. Right? Not like, where are the people who got their jobs ripped from out under them? Let's go there. They're going, where are we going to pay less in taxes? That's how they're making that decision. Here's just, this is probably hard to see, this is just, where do our goods come from? The red are the sectors that will be most impacted by tariffs. Those are the most that we source from. Green, obviously, is where we get it domestic. It's hard to tell if tariffs are working or not. It's probably too early at this point. And the question is the policy goal. There's 3 potential policy goals with tariffs, and you can only pick one. Is it to onshore jobs? If it's to onshore jobs, you want to keep tariffs in place to equalize or make America relatively cheaper. Is it to raise revenue? If it's to raise revenue, you don't want to onshore jobs, because if you onshore them, imports drop, and you don't get as much revenue. And then the third one is, do you want to lower the playing field, get the other countries to drop their tariffs? If that's the case, you're not trying to onshore, you're just trying to lower the playing field and the tariffs go away. All 3 of those compete with each other. I don't know which one we're after, it hasn't been communicated, but you can only pick one of those goals. But are tariffs working to bring jobs back? It's too early to tell. But I'm Catholic, And I think an early leading indicator is we're making our popes in America now. Maybe they're working. So, with that, put a bow on tariffs. Tariffs will be more microeconomic than macroeconomic. If you're impacted by them, there's no easy way around it. Our long-term strategy is be as USA-centric as possible. The onshoring trend is already happening. It's easy for me to say, raise your prices, cut your costs. When I'm working with clients, and we're trying to find cost-cutting places, the North Star we're trying to follow is we can only cut costs and don't limit our growth goals for the next 5 years. Our clients we're working with, we have very aggressive growth goals for the next 5 years. We want to take as much market share, and anything that we're cutting that inhibits that is off the table. And obviously raise prices aggressively, but that depends on where you fit, right? Do you have a good that's easily substituted that isn't being impacted by tariffs? You might have to eat more of it, understanding that. However, right now, with all my work that I do with our clients, I will tell you, most are having relative ease passing costs on right now. Some that aren't even impacted with tariffs are raising prices because of tariffs, and it's been an easy go. We own a coffee shop here in town, and we got the city council to put a tariff or a tax on all our competitors, right? And our coffee's $3, now everyone else is $5. We're still going to raise our coffee to $4.50, right? It's bad business if we did. So, let's pivot now to the front of the economic trend, the financial. Inflation, interest rates. I found this correlation really interesting. So this is our former Federal Reserve chairs next to the bond yields. And we should have known when Jerome Powell showed up, we had to get higher rates. So now, we are 6+ months past the election and all that anxiety and turmoil. I think as Americans, we can unite on the most important issue. And that's supporting Danny DeVito as our next Federal Reserve Chair. Generally, looking at bond yields, this is probably the new normal. We're not going to see this decade. We had a freak out maybe 2 weeks ago. I forgot which trade policy or trade ping pong happened, and rates jumped up. I got a lot of questions. Oh, is this going to trigger something really bad? It jumped up from 4.41, which we're at now again, to 4.5. It wasn't that big of a freak out. When you zoomed out and looked at this, kind of stayed in where we believe the new normal's probably setting in. Interest rates between now and September. This will probably be the low point in interest rates you're going to get for your business the rest of this decade. So if you're going to make investments in your business, you're going to be financing them, do it in the next 3 months or so. But I also think it's more important. I don't think the low is going to be much more meaningful than where we are now. So it's more important to ask yourselves, when do I need the ROI on that investment? It's not worth delaying if you need that ROI sooner, trying to time a not so meaningful low versus getting that, whatever your investment, starting reaping the ROI from it. But there is no magical low in interest rates coming the rest of the 2020s. Big driver for that is we see inflation coming back. So dark blue line is your consumer price index. The leading indicator here is the money supply, which leads by 24 months, so it's a big shift. We're already starting to get the increase in the money supply. You increase the money supply, clearly you can see this happened way out here, and then we got inflation. It's a cool story when it's election season, because we often blame the politician at the current time for the inflation. We got to go back a ways. Yes?
M2 or TMS?
This is M2. Okay. M2, for those who don't know, that's a nerdy econ term. M2 comprises cash on hand, savings account, checking accounts, mutual funds, money that the consumer or businesses have very easy access to. You can use a variety of, as he mentioned, there's others you can look at. This is our forecast for inflation through 27. So we see the low coming soon, kind of settling in then the next 3 quarters where we kind of have been high 2s, low 3s. By the end of next year, we see inflation ending at about 4%. So as I mentioned, your top line is going to do great. The squeeze is going to come again. This past election was won because of inflation. Whoever's in power gets punished. If I was a Republican in Congress, I'd be sweating if I believe this, because this is a great political killer. It happened last time, it'll probably happen next year. The Federal Reserve is right now still believing we're going to get easing inflation into next year. We disagree, so you can root for them, but I would use us as the planning. If we're wrong and they're right, you plan for this, you're going to do great. Flip it the other way, and we're right and they're wrong, you're in trouble, or you're feeling it more. And then what we do expect, I'll give you the long-term view. We do see 27 kind of getting a little bit of an easing again, just due to a cooling or a less softer demand in the economy, not a recession, just slower growth, and then things will accelerate again. We see 29 inflation being 7 to 8%. Getting up there. And this is going to be a huge tell. We'll get into this at the end, but watch. If next year we start seeing what we're forecasting here, that's a huge tell that the 2030s are going to be significantly more difficult of an economic period. Kind of teasing what we'll get to eventually. Here's the producer price. So it's in a 12-12 here, so it's a little smoother. This is more a reflection of your bottom line. It tends to be a little more volatile. CPIs are usually a little stickier, but we see 12-12 had smoothed it out a little bit. There's our forecast. This is mounting pressures on your prices, or on your bottom line. Early 6 months ago, before the trade chaos ensued, we were seeing the economy at the time, growth rates pick up right about now. That uncertainty kind of delayed the pickup for us and our outlook. And I was really preaching in the second half of this year with the low point of inflation, stable interest rates, activity picking up, businesses, customers will be feeling pretty good. If we get the easing on the uncertainty, we will get that. If the sentiment starts picking up, sentiment's not the greatest predictor of where the economy's going. We don't like it as a leading indicator, but it's a great gauge of when you should be raising your prices. So if we get into September, October this year, and the positivity is starting to go up, the uncertainty is coming down, take advantage to raise your prices. Because it will be a lot harder to raise your prices when next year, a year from now, we're toying with 4% inflation. Sentiment will reverse. Can you get ahead of that, of 2026, so you're not in a position where you're forced to raise prices at a point that's not going to be received well and be more challenging to get those price increases through. So, it's still kind of hard with that uncertainty causing that sentiment to be down. If we see it ease, just be ready to strike with the price increase.
How much are the world wars that are happening, how much will those impact uncertainty?
They certainly can add to it. They certainly increase, I guess, the anxiety. I don't know if President Trump can at least give us a clear, confident signal what the next 3.5 years will be, from just a tariff, trade policy standpoint. I don't think the wars will have a huge detrimental effect unless we put boots on the ground. I think that would cause problems with the uncertainty. If we generally maintain the perception we're staying out of it, proxy wars, right? That's the new MO. I think the public's confidence will do fine. I don't think it'll be the biggest driver. I think things would be better if we didn't have those conflicts going on. But yeah, I think it's more important that we just get that clear. If it's 10% tariffs, fine. 30, fine. 0, fine. Just let us know what it's going to be for 3.5 years with relative confidence. Then businesses can plan, act, and move. So I mentioned inflation coming back. Just to summarize, these are the big four. Labor price cycle, wages don't cause inflation. They lag, right? They're not a cause of inflation. But once they catch up, they do help set the new baseline. We do have a very tight labor market. It's going to keep the demand on labor. It's going to at least keep the baseline, right, resetting each time. Fiscal policies, right, it's different than monetary. Right? Monetary, what the Reserve does. Fiscal is what Congress and the executive branch does. We are spending way too much money. It's going to be a driver of inflation. Electricity, power costs, you see oil jumps. Generally, this administration should be more positive for oil prices. Electricity is something we're watching, we're studying closely, because we're watching currently 7% on average of a state's electricity consumption is data centers. In Virginia, where I live, it's 26%. We're the internet capital of the world. 80% of the world's internet at some point touches Virginia. And with AI demanding even more electricity costs on the grid, that's going to be a key driver. I put nationalism. You can use protectionism, industrial policy, onshoring, doesn't matter what adjective. Thomas Sowell, great economist at Stanford, he's 90-something years old now. He has a great quote. That quote is, in life there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs. We're choosing now to onshore and nearshore. Why? We got burned during COVID, our global supply chains got disrupted. The trade-off we're choosing, we want more secure supply chains. The cost is you're going to pay a premium for that. Right? If you want cheaper stuff, you've got to outsource, go to where it is. The trade-off there is you're risking being exposed to disruptions more. So we're making that choice, and it seems to be a global trend. If I'm not going to bring it back into my country, can I bring it to a friend? So friend shoring, I guess. But it's going to be a cost driver. So generally, we don't see interest rates meaningfully declining. Tomorrow we have another meeting. We'll see what they say. I think they're not going to lower interest rates tomorrow. I think what people are watching for is, are they going to be more in favor of one cut by September timeframe? Lock in rates now. If you're doing any refinancing of your debt for your business, do it now. But with that in mind, do not position your business to be in refinancing anything in 2029. The rates will not be favorable. You don't want to do that. If you can, I know banks aren't always favorable for 10-year terms. Lock in 2034-ish if you can to refinance. You can do that with your debt. I don't know how challenging that would be. And really I put 12 to 18 months. I probably should change that to 6 to 12. You want to be looking to invest heavily in efficiency gains. The labor market's going to be tight. You want to make productivity gains. You want to look at what investments am I making to protect my margins. And if my business is going to grow X over the next 5 years, what am I doing to reduce my need for labor growth? You want to protect the folks you have in-house that you're employing, but reduce the need to grow that labor team as much as you can. You don't want to burn your folks out. Well, what efficiencies gains am I trying to make? What am I automating from data collection to sharing to audit your business as well? That's a big one. When I say audit your business, look at what are my products or services that I'm offering, which are contributing most meaningfully to the margin and the bottom line, and which are not. If the juice isn't worth the squeeze in some of them, it becomes a question of, can we fix this? Or do I need to move away from this and lean into what I do better? What's contributing more meaningfully to my margins? I want to have that flexibility and that resilience as we move forward. That will separate a lot of the winners from the losers. And Brian, our chief economist, he does put weekly 5-minute videos on YouTube, on FedWatch. I recommend checking them out. They're obviously free. So quickly, labor. I kind of beat this horse a little bit, but we'll dive into it a little bit. Maps are fun. This just shows where folks are moving across the U.S. One person moved to Idaho. It's a big jump. Broader trends. The South, the baby boomer generation, they're retiring, they're riding off the sunset, beaches, sunshine, and grandbabies, and then to the West. But generally, most places are growing. The ones you expect to not grow, high tax areas, right? New York, Illinois, California, they have unfavorable taxes. I tend to look at, I forgot who does it, there's a group that does like worst states to retire in. It usually is a dead giveaway where the trends are. Right? People are trying to keep as much of their money as possible. Maryland's another one that's not, where my parents live, not a favorable retirement destination, but that one's still growing. This one kind of captures it all. This is unemployed persons per job opening. So it's saying for every one person, there's 0.8 workers available. The demand for labor is outstripping the supply. That's going to keep an upward pressure on labor costs. At the low point, when we had the really tight labor market because of all the loose money, the new money floating around. It was close to a 2-to-1 ratio at that point. I expect it to start trending that way again, generally, as things heat up again. There's what I already alluded to. Here's our open job openings across some sectors. There's your current manufacturing. Purple, 460,000 open manufacturing jobs. So, and we're trying to onshore more, so that's going to keep pressure up. This is exactly what the Federal Reserve wanted. We had these peaks. They raised interest rates. They softened demand. Get a little easing, but it didn't make negative jobs. There's still. I had one client, manufacturer in Ohio. Last year was a tough year for them. We were very bullish in encouraging them to avoid layoffs because we knew that things are going to pick up again. We don't want to go back into having to train folks up. So it's how can you sustain? But he was in a rut, and so I asked him, like, "Are you looking at cutting your labor? Is that on the table now?" He's like, "No, I'm just letting them fail their drug test." Which means during this surge, we didn't have qualified people, right? You're just throwing bodies at the problem, trying to control quality control, and on the way down, you just take more drug tests, let the problem sort itself out. I guess that's the nature of these. Here is your wage inflation by state. So Minnesota, you're kind of right in the median there, about 3.5. Good news is, a year ago, all these numbers were higher, so it was less worse. All right, a little lipstick on the pig. I expect the trend to start going the other direction here imminently as things heat up. I would generally be budgeting for about 4 to 5% wage inflation for your employees over the next 5 years. Generally, we're saying stress test your business for about a 28% increase between now and 5 years out. And that's probably a big reason why you got to be asking yourself, my business, my top line's growing, my business is growing. What am I doing to reduce my need? If I hold all things constant, and that's going to necessitate 30% more labor, what investments can I make to reduce that need to 10% or 15%?
Yeah, I have a question on that.
Yes.
Is that projection accommodating for the advance in AI, autonomous driving? So with those factors in place, you're still predicting that?
Productivity gains usually drive wages up faster. So when we become more productive, you have to pay your bill. Because when someone's using a machine that makes them better at it, they're now worth more. So, yeah. And it's interesting, labor-intensive jobs, obviously it's harder to control those costs. If you're in the service sector, you're more labor-intensive. The more choices workers have, the more pressure it's going to be for you to keep them pay them more. A great example, in 1920 London, more people had a live-in nanny than an automobile. The equivalent cost of a live-in nanny was about $2,000 today. But no one has a nanny now, no middle-class person, because back then, there wasn't a lot of choices in the labor market. You were a nanny or you were unemployed. As more jobs entered, the women typically that were the nannies, so they had more choices on the hands, and they could switch jobs. So to keep your nanny, you had to pay more. That usually causes always shifts in the labor market. And I sent my sister-in-law, who just had her third baby, and the third is the hardest. She was like, a long time ago, people had this help. And I was like, well, they didn't have 2 cars. So I was trying to explain to her. I think she just nodded at me. Here's wages just for Ramsey and Hennepin, did I say that right? It's in line with the trends. They're going up. Here's just the rates of change. So you can look at the 312 to the 1212. The good news is 312 is still below the 1212. That means it's the rise should maybe flatline a little bit or just go straight. More flatness than upward pressure for a little bit, but generally I would expect this to continue to rise. So, sometimes you go to different places and they think they're immune from national trends. Florida's the biggest culprit of that. Florida really thinks they're super special, and I like to burst their bubble. Generally, so labor market's going to be tight. That's not going to change. That's going to be the ongoing one of the major obstacles that businesses face. The more labor intensive you are, that's the service sector. You know, I can't tell, you know, the landscaping crew, they need to automate. Look at me like an idiot. But I can't look at me like, how are you, do you understand which jobs are giving you the most margin? Do you have technology that helps you say no to work that's not worth it? Can you improve and automate your data collection in the field to reduce labor hours that goes into that, to make better decisions? There's other ways to try to protect and preserve margins and make your team more efficient. So, into the middle of the train, the broad macroeconomic trends. Whoops. Trigger happy there, sorry. GDP, it's not overly important for your business. We hear it all the time in the news, so I'll show it to you. This is real GDP or change, so I've deflated it to give us just more of a clear look. Got that little negativity last quarter, primarily due to an import surge in January and some slight, very minor cuts in government spending. Neither of those are necessarily a bad thing. I will dispel the myth the media was pushing. Imports are not a negative drag on GDP. We subtract imports from GDP, in case you heard that, because we count them in other metrics in GDP. It's a double count if we don't subtract it. Subtract it, it's an accounting move. But generally, our dots, our forecasts, we see general GDP growth through 28 here, we see it through 29, the economy growing. Big, I mentioned 49% of GDP is the service sector, 68% of our GDP is consumption, consumer's king. This is real personal income, so we've deflated it again. So it gives us answers the question, how is the consumer doing in regards to inflation? Teal line is with government money, blue line is without. That's what a transfer receipt is. Both are rising. This tells us the consumers are equipped to deal with the pains and the headwinds of inflation. Doesn't mean they don't feel it, doesn't mean they don't like it, or it doesn't mean they like it, but they were equipped to deal with it. I like leaving the teal line, because you get that nice COVID bump there. And that's what happens when we print $6 trillion out of thin air. That peak, that's where we all bought our Pelotons. And then when it starts coming down, that's when we stop using them. But generally, this just, if you break it out between lower middle income earners, middle upper, the middle uppers are doing much better. The lower middle folks are absolutely feeling the pain of inflation more. You listen to McDonald's earning calls or Walmart's earning calls, which I do, so you don't have to. They're definitely, on the depressing side, those are typically a good reflection on how those lower middle income folks are doing. Fun line. And then here's just rates of change GDP, just again give a snapshot of Minnesota to the US. The important lesson is you trend in line with the general US. When the US rises, you rise. When the US slows, you grow, you slow. Not immune from those broader trends. And then there's just a snapshot. I almost didn't share this. I didn't like how they broke out the data here, the buckets, but snapshot into the breakdown of the Minnesota economy in Minneapolis here. But I forgot one of them stuck out. It's like I was looking for something and I couldn't find it in the data. I didn't know where they hid it. Now I can't remember what it was. When I was making this, I was annoyed and I can't remember.
Where's farming?
Maybe that was ruined farming, but yeah, maybe that was it. Someone else pointed out to me like this is. I pulled it from EEA. Yeah, I didn't like the breakdown. Real good for farming. Maybe they. I don't know why they would put it in manufacturing.
Where would healthcare be?
Another state? Oh, right here, green. Oh, it's 9.1%. 9.1%, 11%. Yeah. So I knew when I was looking at this, like, I don't like this. And it caused too many questions. I chose unwisely to include it. If someone really wants the breakdown and this is bothering them as much as me, just email me. I will look because that one's happy to look. You just gotta email me. Just tempt me. If you don't, I'll forget. This is industrial production. I know not everyone fits in this. This is about 20% of GDP. I love this series because it gives a very clear view of what's going on in the economy. One, because it's an index, which means it's not dollar denominated, so we're not catching any inflation noise. It's out of it. Looking at the top, that 0.5%, this is manufacturing, this is oil and gas, this is utilities. We're accelerating into that phase B now. That 312, that 1.5 is above it. This is the industrial economy starting to grow. We're getting that onshoring. This has generally been flat since 2008. I mean, right about here, if you draw it across. Our industrial sector's been flat. I think I haven't done a ton of econometrics with it or studying it. I know other folks have. I think my hypothesis, I think one of the biggest factors are right around $8 to $10 trillion of debt probably put a lot of just pressure and limiting the growth there. Right around 2008, things kind of flat. But we're starting to see rise, looking at onshoring trends and how other economies and trades are shifting. We expect a little bit of growth, some steady, softer growth, really through 29 now in our industrial sector. The unfortunate news is if you do grow your industrial sector, you're more susceptible to pain and downturns. Service sectors are always more resilient. Goods always feel it more when we get demand shocks. Things are pulled down when the demand evaporates. So if we grow our pie, our industrial pie, as a larger percentage, we would feel it more during a downturn. That's the one risk if you're going to hedge more that way. If you're a business leader in the industrial sector, you just have got to react. You don't have as much luxury as a service sector. You've got to react quicker. You've got to be on your toes more. It is definitely a tougher spot to be in. Looking at our leading indicators, this is not an exhaustive list. This is their lead time to industrial production right now. The general consensus is rise, with the Purchasing Managers Index being the one outlier. When we're forecasting, as I mentioned, we're looking at 40, 50 different indicators with different lead times. We don't change our forecast because of one indicator. We're looking for a general consensus. If I see 3 of these go red, I'll write it down. If I see a 4th, we're probably starting to change forecast. They're generally all pointing out. This just goes back to the uncertainty and the tariff noise. There are larger forces in play, and the indicators are pointing to them. That we're entering a period of growth. It's not going to be gangbuster growth, but we'll get this steady growth in the next 4 to 5 years. Here's a good one. So this is manufacturing production, so it's part of industrial. It's not all of it. It's about 12% of GDP. Just crossing over, but looking at utilization rates, which lead by 6 months, they're right at the 0 line, probably saying, hey, that growth isn't going to be super gangbuster at this point. It's going to be more flat, probably staying closer to the 0 line, but still going to get some positive growth. You're probably just not going to write home about it. And then there's that industrial. This is important. This is what we looked at the beginning, that B2B spending with the forecast. I want to bring your attention to is this teal line, corporate profits. These by 9 months, you can obviously quickly see the relationship of corporate profit surge. Businesses are going to spend more, they're going to invest more. When they slow, we're going to get a slowdown. But the bigger story is that 3.5%. Businesses are still more profitable than they were a year ago. 3.5%. This means businesses are well positioned. Additionally, another piece of data you don't see here is corporate cash on hand, so liquidity. About 35% more cash on hand right now in businesses than in 2019. So we're still flush with cash. Now, if you're in the C-suite, you're not looking at 2019 to make you feel better. Just kind of a perspective of where we sit. The last 7 or 8 months, the corporate cash levels have ticked down. There's been a mild decline. Very mild. I'm not overly concerned about it, but it should tell us that will make decision makers more conservative with their spend. Definitely not looking at 2019 perspective. They're looking at last 7, 8 months, feeling a little tightness. Probably means if you are in B2B, not B2C, you need to be much more robust and intentional with your ROI in the near term. If I'm a CFO, I'm looking at 3 initiatives, 2 are getting delayed, 1's getting moved forward with. It's one where I clearly understand the return on each dollar. I'm leading a sales team in B2B, I'm telling them we have got to be even more intentional with those ROIs. So with that, generally consumers and businesses are both well positioned. I put up looking for the next 5 years, competitive advantages must be compelling. What that means is, economy's going to grow, competition is going to continue to mount. Those that stand out and protect their prices, that margin preservation is going to be those that really understand their competitive advantages. And competitive advantage is what's unique to your business. It cannot be replicated by your competitors. They can do it tomorrow. It's not a competitive advantage. So if you don't know what yours are, sit down and figure those out. And equip your sales teams with them. That's how we avoid giving discounts to get the deal done. Believe in the value your product and your service is bringing. You can lead with confidence, be confident in price, and not be price scared. Set aggressive growth goals for the next several years. Take as much market share as we approach the 2030s, and we're going to get into this in a little bit. Having more market share, that's going to set you up for the pressures we're going to feel in the 2030s. And there's just a quick snapshot. I put that out of place. I apologize. That was supposed to be the slide before. That was me this morning trying to change stuff. This is just a quick snapshot of the manufacturing sector. Growth rates, where they currently are, color-coded by your phase that they're in, and then where we see them at the end of each year. I will be sending out a copy of this to everyone can get a copy. So I'll send you a copy at the end, and you can always email me or connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll send it directly to you. Generally, big takeaway is still seeing some red and blue, more green. This is all growth. This is mostly growth. And then, yes, the service sector. So I put in current growth rates across the service sector. You can compare the B to the C. Growth rates from 1212 to the 312, just where the pressures are. And then this is just in billions of dollars where they currently sit. Service sector is always more resilient. When there's downturns, when you see a downturn, you'll see goods contract, manufacturing contract, you'll see services just trend flat. Another, if you're in the good side of the economy, a key strategic initiative should be making sure you have a footprint in the service side. Repair, retooling, refitting, building that side of your business, that will make you more resilient as we enter the next decade. There's going to be more repairing and aging fleets and aging equipment in the 2030s than new buys. You want to make sure you're doing that. So, construction in the 2030s, quick snapshot. Currently, single-unit housing starts is in a little bit of a recession. More just the persistently high interest rates. There's still a lot of demand out there, but the demand sideline just for the price of homes. And people are, they're not looking at the dollar figure. Mostly they're looking at what's my monthly payment. First-time home buyers are getting sidelined more and more. But the good news is, if you're looking, are we overexposing ourselves for 2008 situation? We are not. The average first-time home buyer, what they're putting down is rising. It's around 9%. And the second-plus home buyer is putting down an average of 23% down, and that is rising. So we're putting more cash into each home. That is certainly showing we're not overexposing ourselves like we were in 2008. We generally see general growth in housing. That's 989,000 new homes are started up from the U.S. in the last 12 months. Again, it's a rise. It's a softer rise. Generally, your housing prices are going to go up in the next 5 years. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but in 2030s, we see the average value of a home dropping about 15%. Not as bad of a correction that we saw during 2008, but it will be challenging. So if you use your home as an investment, understand that. If you bought your home prior to the huge drop when at the low point of the interest rates, you will stay in the green the whole time. If you bought your homes this year or on, you're going to be in the red at that point. And by 2036, there'll be a huge inventory glut of housing. I'll get into that too. You can buy your second beach home in 2036. This is just single-family housing permits, which leads by state. So we got a lot of mix of red and blue. Minnesota here, we're down a little bit. It's kind of in line with where we expect. It's just a little mid-year low. We're going to move back into recovery soon. and grow next year in some positive direction. This is just more financial headwinds than not that's keeping things down. I hope I have it. Oh, I think I have it next. And then just interest rates, again, this is probably settling into a new normal. Sometime between now and September will probably be the sweet spot for interest rates. And then they're going to go back up or kind of hang up a little higher. Maybe in 27 we'll get a little bit of reprieve during the slowdown in 27 to grab a refinance. But this is kind of where our new normal is going to be. And this is your screwed index. This is looking at the average house income and what's needed to afford the average home in each state. So mostly a deficit. So here in Minnesota, the average household is short $43,000 in income to afford a home. Now that's pretty good compared to California and Hawaii, or even our northwestern states where all the Californians are trying to move to. I live in Virginia right here. I tried to convince my wife to hop the border to West Virginia because it is alarming. One town in is cheaper, and she said I will never have a West Virginia license plate. So we stayed, paying to be one. But probably the best place still from affordability is somewhere here, kind of call this the Midwest or Middle America. I guess that's not the West down there, but Midwest, but middle of the country. Now this is that commercial construction. This is everything: manufacturing, warehousing, hospitals, schools. Still up 3.2%, but you can see it's slowing. See where that 312 is. See our Dodge expects a little bit of a recession, very mild. This is just indicative of where it fits on the economic train and the interest rates. If you're in this space, if you service this space, data centers, you should definitely be in data centers, and that's not going down. That's only going up. But just keep in mind, this is still hundreds of billions of dollars of new construction. It's just down year over year, right? And then great leading indicator, just to kind of prove I'm not making it up, where we're headed is the green line here next to the blue line, which is commercial construction, is backlogs. We're seeing a contraction in backlogs. That means we're finishing jobs, we're not taking on new jobs. We're working through our backlogs. Things are slowing down. The higher interest rate environment is kind of delaying projects. Now the good news is the low formed much sooner. So I was checking this forecast at ITR. I would write down, hey, we have a risk here that we could have a sooner low. That would be a positive. But we don't change our forecast for one indicator, but we do write our risk down and see if we have enough to justify changing it. Oh, and then this, if you are in commercial construction, this is just the trend by state and the dollar value. So here in Minnesota, actually down 14.4%, but that was still $6.3 billion in new construction in the past 12 months. But we're in a phase A now, enjoying recovery, so we might be ahead of the trend a little bit. All construction is regional, right? I can show you the national trends, but you have to know your region. Even California, I have a commercial construction client. They closed their offices in San Francisco. It's not a huge surprise. They opened one in LA, right? Even within a state, things are different.
What would cause a 61% increase in Wisconsin?
Potentially, like CHIPS Act or something. If they got a large fat $2 billion for IBM or something up there. Is Wisconsin a state or Idaho got a lot of money?
Foxconn was slated to think in Wisconsin.
Yeah, so probably was. They got it. Yeah, they probably got some kind of sweetheart deal. I know there was one story I was reading, I think it was Idaho or Iowa. IBM is building a plant there. Maybe it was Wisconsin. I have to go check, but it's not the point of the story. IBM promised the government, give us this billions of dollars, we build a plant, we're going to hire 15,000 people. They've laid off 1,500. So it's always good to remember, promises at the beginning usually don't pan out.
Why can't we have that money be outcome based? If you say it's
I know,
15,000, then it's 15,000, and if you like Foxconn, they
Yeah,
never
you
came
have
into
to
Wisconsin.
deliver results first, get the money.
You have to return the money with interest.
Yeah. You know, I'm sure this room would do a better job in Congress than we have there currently. That makes too much sense. I think that's the answer to your question. construction market. Big trends, a little bit of a tough time at the end of this year and early part, but by the end of 26, back in the green, some general growth. The one is private manufacturing construction. A lot of funding, government money is drying up. So that's a big pullback there if anyone's interested. What's causing that? Obviously, if Congress decides to have another infrastructure type bill or funding type bill, that would force our hand to change it. We don't make what if forecasts, we forecast based on what is. Some of our competitors put out 3-4 different forecasts of what ifs and then the actual. Like, if this happens, this will be. We just wait. We put out our one on what we know is, and what does that tell us? And we will write, if these things change, we might have to change this. These charts are out of our trends report. We put out a report every month. Has 50 different forecasts, manufacturing, construction, financial, commodities, with a little write-up on each one. It's like $20 a month. Get it on our app. And this is just a summary page. So, the 2030s. This is what we kind of alluded to in the beginning. I can take a lot of questions on this. Our general outlook for the 2030s is around 2030. It's not an exact state. Generally, when we're talking to our clients about preparation, it's second half of 29 to 2031. It's kind of our range that things can kick off. We see the first 6 years of the 2030s as an economic depression across the globe. General decline. It will not be straight decline the way we're forecasting it. If we peak here, we will have a period of decline and then rise. We see a second period of rise and then the low. But those prior periods of rise will not return to where we start. That's our general outlook. Alan, our chief economist, first started putting out these forecasts around 2010 or so. I think maybe it was 2014 when it really became public. He hasn't changed it. I will go over the big drivers here of the outlook. More and more folks are talking about it. Regalio, BlackRock has put out some stuff recently. There's a few. I have a running list of folks that are trying to talk more about the 2030s. It's been a challenging time as we get up to that point. The good news is, before we jump in, the U.S. will remain, in our view, the #1 economy in the world. China will not overtake us. I should have put up the share of GDP of the world. I left the slide out. Our share has been growing. China's has been shrinking. China is not going to overtake us. That's my one disagreement with Ray. Ray's very bullish on he thinks China's going to rise. And Danny wrote that book a while ago, so I haven't asked him recently. We're more on China's not coming to get the U.S. They're going the wrong direction. This is not an official ITR prediction. I will say, though, if you made me bet on where it starts, it'll be Japan or China. China's over-leveraged in infrastructure, debt, and a very problematic demographics. And Japan's central bank owns 50% of their debt. That's a terrible strategy. Both of those countries are the 2 and 4 number economy. They look like they're ripe for starting something. The big drivers to keep it.
Question on that.
Yeah.
China still has usually it still has a higher growth rate than us, according to
Yes, they do.
as we know. So why wouldn't those trends continue there?
Yeah, their growth rate's slowing. They're out of double-digit growth rates. Their working population has now been declining. Their one-child policy has really come back to get them. And they have a lot, and they favor boys, right? They get rid of their girls, they only have boys. We have a lot of single men running around with no prospects. So, didn't think about that one back then. And they're not fans of immigration over there either, so neither is Japan. Their growth rate's slowing. They've also they're 256%, that's GDP ratio. And their yen, no one's going to flock to that as a reserve currency. The US dollar isn't trending in the right direction, but you're not going to switch to Chinese yen as your alternative source. China will remain, by their sheer size, at worst, probably the 3rd economy in the world. The only one I can see of them passing them, and they're so far away from it, it probably would take multiple generations, is India. India actually had babies. They have, their educations are going up. There's some very poor areas in India still. They have a long ways to go. India can figure out the rule of law, so that foreign direct investment dollars, trust it, will flow in. That get as the eventually surpassing China, that's probably 20 plus years away around now. So I don't see China becoming 3 or 4 anytime soon, but I don't see them surpassing the US. These are the big drivers if we were gonna keep it without getting too in the weeds. Big ones, demographics. In the US, it's the baby boomers exiting. How many baby boomers do we have in the room? So you're all gonna be fine in the 2030s. So you can take a nap at this point. You're gonna retire, your investments are gonna be very conservative. If you don't watch the news and have a rule with your kids to only talk about positive things, you might not notice it. If you're Gen X, Millennial, Gen Z, I guess Gen Alpha will be starting to come up at that point, we're going to pay the brunt of it. But it's demographics, baby boomers are leaving, it's brain drain, and we don't have enough to replace them, right? They're taking 40, 50 years of wisdom, knowledge with them. And then healthcare costs, entitlement, Social Security, Medicare, we're going to be putting a lot of pressure on that system. That's going to be a key driver to inflation. And at that point, in 29, we're seeing about 7 or 8% inflation. You can't do quantitative easing at that point. You can't come in and be like, let's get demand up. Let's bring $6 trillion and dump it in. We'll have 12% inflation very quick. And obviously our national debt, we already have over $1 trillion in interest rate payments. We have refinanced $9 trillion of our dollars this month. And that federal funds rate did not go down, or that treasury yield curve did not go down. So we're going to be refinancing that at a much higher interest rate. So that will help boost it even more. Good news is Europe's worse off than us as well. They have negative demographic trends. They have similar debt problems. We also are still the premier reserve currency. Premier meaning we're not the only reserve currency, but we're the premier. Our assumptions and our modeling is we retain them. If we got that wrong, this could be worse. But it comes down to where you're going. BRICS, people ask about BRICS a lot. Those economies that are trying to put together BRICS are not serious economies, so I see them having more obstacles to overcome.
Question on that, how about gold?
Gold we're bullish on. Gold will be, I'm not a financial advisor, so I have to be very careful what I say here. Talk to your financial advisor and make sure they have a plan for periods of higher inflation and higher taxes. The big reason too GDP is not going to grow in this period is those of us who are working will already have a lot of our income being eaten up by higher inflation. And then we have to fund these, so they're going to be coming from taxes, and that will take more out of our pockets. That'll make it challenging. There's a lot of money that's not going into investments and growth. Yeah, that's kind of depressing. But the key is heading up to it from a business perspective. That's what we're telling folks. Grow your market share and minimize your debt as you approach the 2030s. You want to have more cash on hand. That's going to offer you a lot of flexibility. Number 2, as we enter that period, both from a personal standpoint too, you want to have very little debt. Right? I'm going to be carrying a mortgage into that period. That's my only debt. That's hopefully the only debt I will have. Marrying like some crazy medical event. Every time I have a kid, I think I increase that likelihood. Every child I have has been to the emergency room, and I'm just waiting for CPS to knock. Except the baby. He's only 7 weeks old. He hasn't. But sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit there. That'll make it very challenging to grow the GDP to that period. You want to offer flexibility. If you have younger folks that will be coming of age in that period, and this will go for your business as well, it's asking what will be in demand still. Healthcare will be very much in demand. Education, we're going to be doing a lot of retooling education, that won't go anywhere. High-tech stuff is still going to be in demand. State and local government work, firefighter, police. Some legal is going to get a little disrupted from AI. I do know a state law will definitely be in need. 85% of your lifetime healthcare expenditures happen in the last 2 years of your life. So a lot of baby boomers are going to need more healthcare. Big thing, why are we going to get out of this? This is very morbid. Around 2036, that's when we estimate more baby boomers will have moved on to the next life. That's also also why you're gonna have a lot of folks that have 2, 3 homes, suddenly hit the market, they'll have a inventory of houses, so buy your beach house. There will be more millionaires minted in the 2030s than the 2020s, but it's gonna be those who are ready to act. When there's economic downturns, income inequality collapses in the first half and it opens back up in the second half. Because people make different decisions, and yes, some are afforded the opportunity to make different decisions. But even if we redistributed all our wealth equally in some communist utopia in this room, the very next second we would have income inequality, because a lot of you are smarter than me and would invest it and start different businesses, and I would buy a yacht or something. And that would immediately start causing disparities. So if you're ready to strike, 2034, 35, 36, that's where a lot of the millionaires come in. From a business perspective, it's asking, where am I on the demand pool? Meaning, if things are on the chopping block of discretionary spending, where do I fit in that? That will probably tell you how. You can test it in a variety of ways. How is my business affected with inflation? How has it been affected when commodity prices are adjusted or rise? You can look at what's another big one? We have 5 key pillars that we look at. And then the big question is, what markets will do well? Can I expose myself to those markets? And change. And then if not, it comes down to 2028 is probably when we want to look to sell if we're going to get out. But we will remain at the low point a $30+ trillion economy. Right? We're about $30 trillion nominally now. It's going to grow the next 5 years. The low point will probably be about where we are right now. So, not the end of the world. We're not moving to Oklahoma and having sit outside some black and white photo as the tumbleweed goes by. We have safety nets in play now. There's a lot of different things, but it will be 6 years of challenging economic times. The young kids, I covered the young kids part. The other big thing that Brian and Alan, again, I have to be careful, I'm not a financial advisor, they are very bullish on investing in long-term foreign sovereign bonds. And their thought and strategy, they have some of those financial credentials. The dollar is very strong right now. And if you go after their top 4 countries for financial resilience, they have America's up to 5. Switzerland 1, Sweden 2, Australia 3, and Canada just made the list. They're looking at debt to GDP ratios and a few other factors. Those 4 bonds, they say that, we're going to sprinkle in different countries. But the idea is the dollar will likely soften. If you buy a Swiss bond at 4%, and in 2036 sell it out, and the dollars drop 20% in relation to the Swiss franc, their currency, you get an accelerator. You get the 4% plus the exchange rate back, so it becomes a 7 or 8% investment suddenly. I talked to my financial advisor about it. At first, he was a doubter, and then I gave him some data, and I will come back and disagree with me. Got him on my side now, so I was like, I don't know how to buy a foreign bond, so can you learn? So that's what he's working on right now. But that's depressing. Someone called economics the dismal science. I hope I didn't disappoint. But if you're ready for it, that's how you prepared for it, that's how you're successful in it, that's how you come out much wealthier than when you went in. So, to put a bow on it, next 5 years are going to be growth. Be aggressive with your market share. It's going to be a different environment. Your top line's going to do great, as we said. It's that bottom line. Lock in the interest rates now. Be as USA-centric as possible. Look at where you're making those efficiency gains. Audit your business. What areas am I most successful in? What do I do best? Lean into those. You will do well in the next 5 years, and you'll be positioned well as we head into the next decade. And worst case, best case, we're wrong on the 2030s. I go on the best apology tour ever. Your businesses will be in even a better position if you prepared for it at 2030. And we're wrong, than if the other side. You're not going to be worse off if you're building your business for resilience. You'll be in a position to really lean in and invest in the 2030s. There's no downside in that type of preparation. I do have, if you email me, I'll send it to you. I have the 2006 newsletter that Brian, our chief economist, wrote, where he nailed the Great Recession 2 years out. Where he He's like, this is coming, it will be a downturn, we need to start preparing. He did not see the funny business we did with mortgage-backed securities. That obviously made it worse than what he thought, but he nailed the timing that something was coming, there was going to be a recession. I've met many long-term clients when I'm on the road that have come to me and they're like, Brian saved my business. I had one young man in Naples, Florida, probably my age, took over his dad's construction company. Said in 2012, we were barely making it, we got crushed. I went to a talk with Brian. Brian sat up there and said, if you can sleep at night, you haven't taken out enough debt on your business yet. I went home and said, like, we're going to do it. It's like, change our lives. So it's cool when you hear stories like that. So I'm happy to send that around. He nailed it. Obviously, there's other factors that can play in that can change how bad or how not as bad it could be. Like if we get into a global war, it would delay. War did not get us out of the Great Depression. That's a myth. But it can band-aid over what's lurking. After World War II, we went back into a depression. I never tell you that. Because suddenly everyone came home, and we weren't making tanks and bullets and bombs anymore. And we were kind of right where we got left off before we entered. It took about 2 years before we climbed out. So, I will take questions about anything. This, Bitcoin.
Where does crypto weigh in on it as a disruptor? And with relation to the valuation of the dollar, you already said that the valuation.
Yeah, I mean, crypto is right now it's very speculative. I have crypto investments, but it's like enough that if I lose it all, I can move on with my life, and it does really well. I have a great year. It's kind of where I would put it. Crypto is very speculative. There's a lot of. I'm optimistic that it could change things. It could become. It comes down to the technology. It's the blockchain that's holding where crypto goes. The blockchain's too slow at processing right now, transferring communicating, basically storing the transactions, that for it to really be a disruptor, the transaction speeds of whatever's exchanged across the blockchain, the coins, the exchanges has to speed up a lot for it to really become a disruptor. It could, it's just a matter of when. Same with AI. The one thing that could change the 2030s, something has to happen. There's a lot of headwinds, there's a lot of problems that have to come, that we're going to have to pay the price for, is if we make huge productivity gains. If we get more, if we produce more with less at a very aggressive level. You have quantum computing, you have AI, when those two eventually merge, that's going to take us to a new level of wealth that we can't even fathom. But a 5-year runway to 2030 probably isn't enough. I hope I'm wrong. If you look throughout history, every time there's a new technology from gunpowder to the printing press, the runway to disrupting how we do things and how the world is better off materially in that sense, shortens, but 5 years looks a bit short of a runway. But hey, I would love to be wrong on that one.
Okay, so the company that I founded, you're thinking about an acquisition in a 3 to 5 year time frame. Now with this information, I'm considering the bigger.
Depends on the market, but yeah, I would be cautious. I just told someone they should make an acquisition this year.
Got it.
I don't know in 5 years I'd be making an acquisition.
Right.
Depends on what market they play in though too.
Education, SaaS, okay.
It's not the worst one. I wanted to have a little deeper into stuff, but
Okay.
another thing, number one rule at ITR, you're not allowed to sell from the stage. We're not trying to sell. We do, Brian does it exclusively, our chief economist. He does do a resilience testing for businesses. It's a 15-year forecast and evaluates what markets you're in and then evaluates, all right, where do you need to lean into? And then eventually, some of them, he's like, we need to have a crowd plan to sell. Like, there's no way out of this. So if you're interested, financial resilience, but again, I don't get anything for that. I don't have a quota. I won't get credit if you call unless you tell them it was me, but you don't have to. But that is something we do offer. We do offer acquisition and analysis and when to sell for our clients too, if we want to get out. Whether it's for the 2030s or just I want to retire and go into sunset, right off in the sunset.
Yeah, I got one. Yeah, if you are going to make an acquisition in those early 2030s at a business that's not dealing with these headwinds, is that going to be a opportunity?
Yes, you get a great deal, probably around 2033 on. You should start buying like crazy. If you can go into the 2030s with cash and be ready to strike, you will come out of the 2030s with a lot more market share, and yeah, you can change your life, your business, and your personal life a lot. Right around 2033, the opportunities will start opening up. People will be feeling really depressed still, which if you can follow the data and move forward with a clear mind, that's what's going to separate you from everyone else.
Have you had a chance to look at Ray Dalio's latest book?
That's the latest one. I read the original one. I have it. What's the original one? It's on my shelf. Yeah, the change one. What's his most recent one?
I can't.
Yeah, I follow him. I mean, when he says stuff, I'm always interested. Yeah. He spent a lot of his career in China, so he's really got a lot of Chinese experience. He's seen how the society works. So he's bullish on it. And I haven't spent time in China. We're not. That's our one divergence. We're not as bullish on his outlook on China, but he's in line with something's coming. Then there's the Fourth Turning. I can't remember who wrote that one. It's another book that's very similar to Ray Dalio. I'll think of the name in a minute. It's similar. It's saying the 2030s, something's coming.
So you did talk about crypto and AI. Thinking more about AI, if it were, did you just not touch it's just too far out for the disruption that it would be to jobs, or to like UBI impacts or changes?
Yeah, I mean, UBI is like a whole other, that's like a policy prescription. I find that interesting. I did a lot of reading on that in grad school. We don't really we don't write about what policies should be at ITR. My favorite group is the American Institute of Economic Research out of Massachusetts. They do a lot of more policy research. If I ever did a fellowship of that time, I would want to apply to do a fellowship with them. They have a lot of, 5 or 6 professors from George Mason, where I went, are fellows there. AI is going to be a disruptor, though it's not going to save humanity, it's not going to end humanity, somewhere between that, but it will be more positive from a productivity standpoint. It's just a matter of when we start really reaping the productivity. It will come, it's just a matter of when. And once the quantum computing marries itself with AI, I can't even fathom what that would do. But it's going to be the future. It's going to take us to places. I mean, who in the 90s thought you could make 6 figures on YouTube? You know, what is a YouTube? And that's not, I don't know, it's not really producing that. Imagine what that's going to do.
So there's no predictor on time. I bet you guys tracked about that.
Oh, when that will hit? We do have like a see, this is the tricky part. So we have a proprietary methodology that I'm not 100% privileged to. There's 4 people in-house who know everything. So when we forecast, we get like 15 forecasts that are using the secret Krabby Patty formula. And then we use that as our foundation. I don't know 100% what into these 15. I've been trying to reverse engineer it secretly. They do have a technology, like we're due for like a technology disruptor at different points in time in some of this proprietary, and I do know around 33, 34 is kind of their range of like, this is when we'll get major technological disruption. It's just a matter of like, is this AI, is this quantum computing, is this something else?
How did your predictions get affected by COVID?
So we did a lot of testing, and by we, mostly those 4 senior forecasters, Brian, Jackie, Grace, and Eric are their names, where they were like, did we pull this up, did we push it back? And when they came out, they were like, the timing seems to be online. The bad news is the cliff's going to be higher. Because we had a recession forecasted for 26 pre-COVID, and coming out of COVID, we essentially didn't see it happen anymore. We essentially described it as getting pulled up into that downturn in COVID. But that lack of recession will end up at a higher point. So we say it could actually be more painful this time because the peak is higher. We're not going to get that, I guess, a little bit of that correction or fat trimming that a recession gives you at times. Recession discovers who's really not profitable, who's not productive, and then trims the fat. That's, I guess, the benefit of the bust. I tend to tell people, fear the boom, don't fear the bust. Bust is nature, the invisible hand doing its work. The bust is we're toying around with something. hope I didn't make people too depressed. Because the exciting part is the next 5 years lean in, have a plan, minimize your debt, offer yourself the flexibility. 25, 26, 7, 8, 9, the obstacle, we know what the obstacles are going to be, right? There's never a perfect environment. There's always an obstacle.
Can you speak more to real estate projections, times to invest, times to sell? You mentioned
29 will probably be the peak of the market if you're trying to sell out. Our forecast for the real estate market is about 15% decline from 29 to about 2036. The big problem there is just going to be the influx of supply into the market. There's so many baby boomers will have moved on, their kids aren't going to want to pay those estate taxes, they're going to sell. And they'll probably do have deflation, which is very painful, built in 35 and 36 of the economy. So, if you're in a position to buy, but it's also looking at your house and understanding that the value of it in 29 will be about 15% less. So it's, my perspective is my house is up with my 6 kids, I'm not making it part of my retirement planning. I know I'm going to be able to make the mortgage payments, and I'm just going to, it's their home. I'm not going to get caught up in, I have no plans of moving, it's a great house. That's probably the mindset you're going to have. Or if you're in a different position, I'd be looking at late 28 as the time to put it on the market, take top dollar, and then buy it back in 2033.
you touched on time to sell business, but can you go into more considerations and details on that?
Yeah, the big one, general trends, I said it, it's 2028. The big reason is you probably will find the peak in 29, but it's anything outside of, we typically deliver 3-year forecasts to our clients. Some pay for the 5 years. After 5 years, accuracy starts plummeting. It's not so much how low, it's we know the timing, and it's like you're really playing with 5 if you're trying to find the peak in 2029. So typically we're saying, have a 2028 exit plan. It's basically saying I'm not going to take the peak, but I know we're close enough. And we're keeping our finger on the pulse, and we could alter that. I mean, gosh, we're all watching the news right now with Iran and Israel. If something really terrible happens in the next couple of weeks, when we enter a global type of conflict, that will probably push this projection out since like 2030 or 2032. That would be, that's probably the #1 adjustment that could change the time.
You mentioned it was a tight job market for employers and that there's many jobs open but few people looking for work. Are there certain sectors that are driving that? Is that more on the industrial side? Because it almost feels counter as we're sitting here talking, thinking about what we're seeing in the service industry.
Yeah, I mean, so elaborate a little bit there, and then
So we do executive search for technology leaders,
Okay.
and that is slow right now, hiring that higher end executive. People are a little nervous. So when you say it's a
and
tight
people don't want
market,
to switch jobs right now.
people don't want to switch jobs, they're uncomfortable. So you need people to switch jobs so
Yeah.
we get work, right?
Yeah.
And people are a little nervous right now. So I would say it'd be when you say it's a tight market, is it really on that lower end?
Yeah, I mean, typically, if you break it out, 20 to 24-year-olds have over a 5% unemployment rate right now. So there's a little, and I do have a chart in these today that has a quit rate on it. The quit rate has plummeted, which means people are staying put. No one wants to be last in, first out right now, right? Then the uncertainty is going to drive that. Once we put that down and things start heating up again, I would expect the quit rate to start going back up the other direction, so people would just switch.
In the next few years?
Yes, I would expect the quit rate to reverse trends as soon as we're past this uncertainty phase.
And when is that?
I mean, you can start feeling the positivity as soon as in the next quarter or so, but definitely next year, 26. I do know, I find that,
Exactly. But
yeah, the 20 to 24-year-old one is what captures my
at lunch
thought.
today, that'd be great.
Yeah. Kids with bachelor's degrees are having a harder time. And a lot of it is because it's easier to self-train. And an 18-year-old knows just as much about a computer as a 22-year-old now. And so there's not as much advantage that colleges is giving as it used to. And so we were starting to see this little bit of a rise in the younger. I remember I came out of college college during the Great Recession. And I remember that was tough, but I didn't lose my 401k, so I don't know what that's like. I just know that I ended up mowing grass in the golf course for 9 months while I was trying to get into the professional world. I think that's what kids are starting to feel.
Just speaking about younger people coming out of college, I'm noticing a lot of companies now are just simply not hiring entry level because those jobs are being filled by AI. You know, the places where students are trained, they're not there anymore. Are you noticing that? Is it happening in mass? Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting period of time because the world is changing in that sense. It's going to be, especially for those AI is going to be the biggest disruptor to those entry-level jobs. And I heard one, again, I'm not an AI expert, I was at a conference I was talking about AI. And his prediction, it's just him, he's like, women re-entering the workforce after having a child will suffer. Because typically it's, all right, did that, I want to go back. Sometimes they get their foot in the door by doing data entry and then moving on up. And those foot in the door jobs are starting to be pulled out. But also with the younger kids as well. The places that I think, especially for young people, also trades, kind of romanticize them a lot. Like, we need more trades. I think the romanticism is appropriate. College, undergrad school, I went to in Ohio, Franciscan University, Steubenville, Ohio, Catholic school, obviously. They started a second school called St. Joseph the Worker. Most of the young men going to it, it's trades. You go in, they give you a 4-year degree in Catholic studies, so you can just have a bachelor's degree. You walk out with a trade. Diesel mechanic, electrician, plumbing, and you walk out debt-free. So like, imagine like a 22-year-old kid, debt-free, making 80 grand as like an electrician or a plumber. Like, you can start a family. I think that's good money. Those types of models, partnering with those types of folks is the shift that probably have to happen. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of, it's going to be interesting. I'm actually, again, not to harp on my Pope Leo joke, but he chose Leo. The last Leo was during the Industrial Revolution, and he wrote an encyclical specifically about workers, dignity of work. And it was like 140th anniversary is coming up. He's like, he's going to drop something that's going to make people happy, make other people really upset. I had to read that encyclical in grad school in economics because it was so economically focused that they actually made us read that. I was like, at my econ nerds, can't wait for that. But it's going to be focused on AI.
Second home investment, so it's going to keep going up until 2028.
Yeah.
And then, are they going to?
We'll lose about 15%. Again, and then it becomes a question of there's going to be more renters, so that rental income, and I know I'm going to go back in the green post 2036. So is my investment horizon. Does that fit, or do I want to get out of it and then buy, and then have the cash to buy back in once those prices dip in the 2030s? It kind of becomes that decision of sell out, ride the income that the rental is going to give me, or sell out and buy back.
Will it lose more than 15% because it's priced higher?
Yeah, it also depends on where you are, right? I was in Naples, Florida a few weeks ago. I was like, houses here are probably going to be fine for a while. Again, you guys are old, but I mean, I want to be morbid. Brian Allen joked, like, you know when the depression will be over? We stop responding on Facebook. They can say that joke. They run the business for 45 years. I can't, but it's so funny. But yeah, it depends on where you are, where the demand is so different. All construction, so some will do fare better than others regionally, right? So understanding the markets, some different places got rocked differently during 2008, right? Nevada and Florida got destroyed. Other places didn't fare as bad. So.
Once recovery happens after a downturn, there's a lot of things that prices have fallen, and those are obvious buys. What about during a downturn like this? What are you buying during a multi-year downturn?
In what aspects? I mean,
during 2029 to 2036.
investments like precious metals, the bonds, I know there's those types of things. Probably not going to be doing real estate the first 3 years. I'm going to stay out of that because of appreciation. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'd be very careful to talk to a financial advisor. I mean, in mind, I'm like, here's the macro data that I'm looking at, these trends. If we're in this environment, how would you advise me to invest? And then have that relationship. So I chose mine. I didn't tell them what I did. And I'm like, hey, I think the 2030s are going to be bad. What do you think? And tell him I was like, is there anything? He's like, I actually think it's going to be bad too. I was like, oh, go on. And then I switched over to him because at least, and his big view is taxes. Like, they're coming for your money. So his big strategy is how can I reduce my client's tax liability as we move forward? How can I protect you from taxes in our investment strategy? So.
Yeah, this is
I
gonna
know.
sound crazy, but, you know, like, our debt is out of control.
Yes.
And, I lived in a highly inflationary economy in Brazil in, 1990s.
Fascinating. Okay.
And, what ended up happening there, is, you know, they had their debt was out of control. The government declared a bank holiday and, borrowed 80% of everybody's money and left them with 20% with this kind of promise to repay the thing, change the currency. And I thought, well, you know, this is radical, and you know, I didn't know if my business could survive on 20%. It did, but I never saw something like that coming here. Is there any way that the government getting into a dire strait could pull a shitty move like that here in the United States?
It could. I don't see it as likely. It also happened in Germany. They did a currency swap after World War II. They had a hyperinflation. Well, they had hyperinflation before World War II.
Yeah.
Then they had it after, and they actually swapped the currency one night. Everyone went to sleep, and all the currency was switched the next day. It actually worked out in the long run. I don't know too much about the history. I've read a few things on it, so I was fascinated by it. But they basically like, what if, and they gave very terrible exchange, probably about the exchange rate there. Like, you're going to get 100 whatever marks, you're going to get 20 back with this new currency.
Well, there could be an opening for crypto.
Yes,
They'll take that. They'll take that. Yeah.
This is going too far down the rabbit hole, so I'll do it very briefly. There's been certain moments in American history and world history where we have reset the global currency environment. There was Bretton Woods at the end of World War II, where the U.S. would stay on the gold standard, and everyone else would we became the premier reserve currency. Only we were on the gold. And then in 71, and obviously something happened in the Depression when FDR, we started moving, it was slow erosion of the gold standard. And then 71, we moved off the Bretton Woods agreement, completely moved off the gold standard, where we remained the premier reserve currency. There's more writing picked up by people with PhDs that are smarter than me that think we're trending towards the need, and that there's early things in motion that we're going to have another global currency reset, where the dollar will remain the premier, but we're going to actually shift back to a commodity-based backing, whether that's gold or other things. I don't know enough about it. I've read a few things. I think it's interesting. Typical timeline horizon for that, though, is most things about 20 years still left, but that was, and they're like, we're reading, like, we looked at, we want Ukraine mining rights, we want Greenland, one more layer in, like, there's minerals out there. So that's very nerdy rabbit stuff. The U.S. will likely, should remain the premier reserve currency. Not 100% guarantee, I don't personally see it going this way, though. Which is good for us. So, I'll leave it there. I took too much time. I filibustered. Thank you. I've called